Good morning, everyone, and members of the press, of course. Good morning. My name is Neil Levesque, and I'm the Executive Director here at the New Hampshire Institute of Politics at St. Anselm College. I want to welcome you all to a fabulous location, particularly you, Mr. Secretary. We boast that we have more presidential campaign activity here than any other location in the United States. You're keeping that going, so I appreciate that. A couple of things about Politics and Eggs. First of all, Politics and Eggs is not possible without all of the sponsors, and these banners that hang here are our sponsors. Many of them longtime people who have helped continue this series. If many of you saw The West Wing, you'll know that that was Josiah Bartlett. Was it Josiah Bartlett? Went to speak at Politics and Eggs, and this has been going on for some time. The person who created Politics and Eggs is Fred Coker, who is here at the head table. And we're glad that you're here. If you walk through the Institute too, there's much more to this building than just in this room. It's really a historical record of the New Hampshire presidential primary, something that we are very pleased that's going to continue into the future with the help of many of you. We have a wonderful partnership with the New England Council, New England's Chamber of Commerce. This has been probably one of the most successful partnerships we've had here at the Institute of Politics, and the CEO is here for purposes of introduction. Jim Brett. I want to introduce Jim Brett for the purposes of an introduction. Jim. Oh, there you are. I was looking for you.
These yours? Oh, those are his. Thank you very much, Neil Levesque, and I want to thank the entire team here at the Institute for, as he already said, we're fortunate to have such a tremendous partner to host these wonderful Politics and Eggs events. And as he also alluded to, these would not be possible without the generous support of all these sponsors that we have that provide the venue and the breakfast. And if you see anyone from any of these distinguished companies, you should say thank you for supporting these wonderful forums that we were able to provide. I believe it's 657 days to the 2020 election, and I believe it's 391 days, assuming that it stays on schedule. It will be 7 days after Iowa that New Hampshire will have the first in the nation. So today is a very historic day. I'm told these dates were pretty accurate. If they're not, blame New Hampshire Journal for giving me this. But today is a kickoff, really, of the Politics and Eggs. And we couldn't be more excited, needless to say, to be here for the first. I'm sure that we'll have many, many, many more Politics and Eggs in the coming year. The year is off to a very busy start for many of us at the New England Council. Next week, we'll be hosting three congressional roundtable events, including breakfast with two new members of the New England Congressional Delegation, Representative Lori Trahan and Representative Ayanna Presley will be speaking to the New England Council, and also we will be back here in New Hampshire, just down the road at the Bedford Village Inn for a congressional roundtable with Congresswoman Annie Custer. Now that's providing that they will be able to be here, because the word is now that they may be called back in session all next week. And so stay tuned to see if we can have these events next week. On January 29th, we'll be in Washington for our Capitol Conversation event, beginning of the new year with Congressman Seth Moulton. On January 31st, we'll host the mayor of the great city of Austin, Marty Walsh, at a breakfast event. We'll be back here again in New Hampshire for another Politics and Eggs event with former Congressman John Delaney, who will be speaking. So it'll be a busy couple of weeks. We have several others that we'll be announcing in the next few days as well. But today we're very pleased to welcome one of the newest entries to the field of the candidates for the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination. That is the Secretary Julian Castro. Many of you know that he's a native of San Antonio, Texas. He got his start in politics in 2001 at the age of 26 when he became the youngest member of his hometown city council. He was elected mayor of the great city in 2009 and quickly got to work on issues like expanding access to early education and investing in neighborhood revitalization. His hard work and his early success as mayor won him recognition in 2010 when he was named both to the World Economic Forum's list of young global leaders in Time Magazine's 40 Under 40. I'd like to get that in the next year or two. 40 Under 40. I'd love to get that next year. So he truly is, he was considered a rising star at a very young age in American politics. After delivering the keynote address at the Democratic National Convention in 2012, he joined the Obama administration in 2014 as the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, becoming again the youngest member of the Obama cabinet. He served as the HUD Secretary through the end of President Obama's second term, during which time he worked very hard to stabilize the housing market, to rebuild communities that were struck by natural disasters, and decreased homelessness among veterans, and something I know he's very, very proud of, and he should be. Last fall, he published a memoir called An Unlikely Journey, waking up from my American dream. And this past weekend, he announced his candidacy, as many of you are aware, for president in 2020. And we couldn't be more pleased that one of his first stops on the campaign trail is right here at Politics and Eggs in New Hampshire. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to the Honorable Secretary of the Housing and the former mayor of the great city of San Antonio, the Honorable Julian Castro. Okay, my man. Okay.
Good morning. Jim, thank you very much for that very kind introduction, and maybe I can make you a deal that I'll let you have the 40 Under 40 if I can borrow a little bit of your gray hair these days. I need it. And to everybody here at St. Anselm's College, big thank you, gracias, for hosting us today, as well as the New England Council and all of the folks who have made it here this morning. I know I talked to some people who drove in from Boston and from other places. Thank you so much for being here. I was here for the first time. It's hard to believe that it's already been a year. I was here on January 24th of last year to visit with the New Hampshire Young Democrats, and also sat down with students here at St. Anselm's College. And what I said back then, I think I've seen applies today, which is that here in New Hampshire, y'all take your politics as seriously as we take our barbecue in Texas. You write about it, you talk about it, you savor it. So I'm happy to be here to kick off this series of what I'm sure will be, as Jim said, a very busy season over the next several months. Well, the other day I had the opportunity to announce the beginning of my campaign for president in San Antonio, Texas, in the neighborhood that I grew up in. I was there with my brother, Joaquin. Some of y'all may know my brother. We're twins. Joaquin likes to go around saying that the way to tell us apart is that I am a minute uglier than he is. I'm actually a minute older. I was there with my mother, with my wife, and our children. And in the neighborhood that Joaquin and I grew up in, that my grandmother immigrated from Mexico to when she was 7, and that my mother grew up in. It was a very special moment. It reminded me, as I said that day, of something I said a few years ago when I had the chance to stand in front of the Democratic National Convention, which is that the American dream throughout our history really has been not a sprint or even a marathon, but a relay. The process of one generation working hard so that they could pass on greater opportunity to the next. I've seen that, like I bet many of you have, in my own life. My grandmother that I grew up with came here from Mexico as a 7-year-old orphan with her younger sister in 1922. Her parents had passed away, and the nearest relatives they had lived in San Antonio. So she grew up there on the city's west side. She never finished elementary school, so she worked as a maid, a cook, and a babysitter. She raised my mother as a single parent, and my mother raised my brother and me as a single parent after the age of 8 when my parents split up. Joaquin and I went to the public schools of San Antonio, and we had a chance to go to college and to law school, and to come back to our home community and become professionals. Both he and I became lawyers and public servants. I ran for city council, and he ran for state representative. We got elected when we were in our late 20s. So we had the chance to reach our American dream, like so many other families throughout the generations. And I am quite sure that my grandmother, as she was growing up as a young girl in 1920s Texas, never could have imagined that just 2 generations after she arrived in the United States, that one of her grandsons would be a member of the United States Congress, and the other would be announcing his candidacy for President of the United States of America. But that's America for you. It is a place where dreams can come true. A country that has propelled families from places all over the world to greater and greater opportunity and success. And I'm running for president because I want to make sure that the opportunities that were available for me are available for every American in this 21st century. I'm running because I believe that we need new leadership and new energy, and because today it is clear that we're in danger of dropping that baton. Because in too many ways, we're going backward instead of forward. The thing is, though, that if we want to move forward, it takes more than just rhetoric. It takes more than just political talking points. It's going to take a vision and the political will to make that vision possible. My vision for the country is this, that in the 21st century, America will be the smartest, the healthiest, the fairest, and the most prosperous nation on earth. A few years ago, when I was mayor of San Antonio, I found myself in India on Republic Day in the state of Tamil Nadu. And as I visited and watched the Republic Day ceremonies, which is their day of national pride, go by, one of the government officials there told me that there were 400 different engineering programs in that state alone. It reminded me that today we live in a world in which brain power truly is the new currency of success in this 21st century economy. That those communities, those nations that have it and cultivate it will thrive, and those that don't will fall behind. When I was mayor of San Antonio, I asked the voters to do something that they had never done before. I asked them to raise the sales tax to invest in significantly expanding high-quality, full-day pre-K in the city. You see, the thing is, as I'm sure you all have seen in your own communities, we're very good oftentimes at investing in things. We invest in airports. We invest in highways. We invest in roads and bridges at the local level. I wish, by the way, that that were true nationally, too. But we often have not been as good at investing in people. And folks in my community, many of them said, "You're crazy. This is Texas. Who's going to vote to raise the sales tax in the state of Texas?" They said, "That's not the job of a mayor." But I believed that improving the educational achievement of that community was my job. I saw reports about the city falling behind in terms of its ability to compete against cities around the nation and around the world. And so we took to the voters pre-K for SA. And in November of 2012, the voters of San Antonio said, yes, we believe in investing in these young people. And they passed pre-K for SA by 53% of the vote. I believe that today in the United States, we need to make sure that every single student gets off to a strong start in life. And if I'm elected president, I'm going to make pre-K for the USA happen in this country because it's right for our students. It's also clear that we live in a time when our economy is changing very rapidly, a time when in the coming years up to 70% of the jobs out there are going to require some form of higher education. Sometimes that's a university degree. Sometimes it's an associate's degree from a community college. Other times it's a certification program or an apprenticeship. We need to ensure, if we want to be competitive, that every single American who wants a higher education can get one. And that's why I believe that we need to work toward a tuition-free system of public university, college, apprenticeship, and certification programs in this country to have the smartest, most well-prepared workforce that we can in this 21st century. That is the way that we're going to compete. Today, too oftentimes, our young people who do get to go to college, because many of them today don't, because they can't afford it, because they think they can't get in, because they talk themselves out of applying. Today, too many are drowning in debt. And because of that, they suffer and our economy suffers. What happens is that those who get out of college, they may owe $100,000 or more in debt. They're in no position to go and buy a home. They're in no position to get on with their life and start to build wealth, start to move forward. We can change that. If we're going to be the most healthy nation, the healthiest nation in this 21st century, we need a different healthcare system. You know, I grew up with my grandmother, and for all of the time that I knew her, she had diabetes. When I was young, I would watch her go off into the other room with her insulin shots to inject herself every day. As she got older and older, throughout her 70s and into her early 80s, her condition got worse and worse. Before she passed away in 1996, she had one of her feet amputated. This is a common story, I'm sure, for those of y'all who have dealt with family members that have been afflicted with diabetes or with another illness. Thank God that Medicare was there for her. Medicare should be there for every single person in this country. I believe that it's time for Medicare for all in the United States of America, that there is no reason that in this wealthiest nation on earth, anybody should go without health care in our country. Being the healthiest nation also means that we have to ensure we make the right investments in communities that oftentimes are riven by pollution or environmental injustices. When I was Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, I had the opportunity to travel to 100 different communities in 39 states. And some of the most poignant moments were hearing about young children who had been impacted by lead poisoning. Their entire lives, their entire futures, their path had been darkened because they had been poisoned at such a young age, something that should never happen in this country. In the Obama administration, we called for increased funding to combat the effects of lead poisoning. I believe that we need to continue to make those kinds of investments to ensure that young people throughout our nation are healthy. If we want to be the fairest nation on earth, we have to reform and to reimagine our justice system. For too many people of color in this country, one interaction with the police can become fatal. It doesn't have to be that way. You can't tell me that if police can apprehend Dylan Roof, the person that shot up that church in Charleston, South Carolina, without hurting him, then that Eric Garner and Tamir Rice and Jason Perro and Sandra Bland shouldn't still be alive today. We need to ensure that innocent until proven guilty applies to everyone in our country, not just people that can afford high-priced defense lawyers. That innocent until proven guilty should not apply only if you have the resources to navigate our criminal justice system. It shouldn't apply only if you have a certain color of skin or if you come from a certain family, but to everyone in the United States of America. I believe that we can get there. We also need to reform our immigration system. Today, we have a broken immigration system. Today, we have an administration that has chosen the path of cruelty over compassion, has chosen the path of politics over effectiveness. We don't have to make a false choice between border security and compassion. We don't have to make a false choice between scapegoating immigrants and ensuring that this country is safe. We can have border security and also humanely deal with the 10 to 11 million undocumented immigrants who are here in this country. We can pass comprehensive immigration reform. As people will remember, 6 years ago, 68 senators in the United States Senate voted for legislation to fix our broken immigration system. But the thing is that it was never given a vote on the House floor. If it had been, it would have passed. I'm convinced that the American people want us to stop the politics and get to the job of fixing that immigration system. The vast majority of Americans do not agree with the president's politics over a wall. They understand that, as many people have told us, we can be more effective by investing in things like personnel and technology. They understand that the vast majority of those undocumented immigrants who are in this country are good people. They're hardworking people. They're people of faith. They're people who have the very same values that all of us do. They're people that each and every day oftentimes are your coworkers, your fellow students, and your neighbors. We need to get past the point of dividing and instead try and unite around a common agenda to find a solution. If we're going to be the most prosperous nation on earth, we have to start by tackling the longest-term existential threat to this country's prosperity, and that's climate change. As president, my first executive order will recommit the United States of America to the Paris Climate Accord to ensure that we play a leadership role when it comes to combating climate change and embracing sustainability. We don't have to choose between creating jobs and also protecting our planet. As we've seen over the last decade, green jobs are one of the fastest growing sectors in our country. oftentimes good paying, offering an opportunity for people to get gainful employment in different parts of our country, including in my home state of Texas. I believe that we can make the right investments in sustainability and infrastructure to put people to work and also to cut down on carbon emissions and to ensure that we protect our planet in the years to come. Being the fairest nation also means that we need to raise the minimum wage. It has almost been a decade. I can tell where the workers are here. It has been almost a decade since Washington raised the minimum wage. Many of the folks in this room understand because you see your colleagues, or if you are a supervisor or a business owner, you know that too many folks in our country have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to put food on the table, just to pay the rent, just to keep the lights on. And it shouldn't be that way. We need to raise the minimum wage so that people who work hard can provide for their family. We also need to address some deep-seated challenges that hardly ever get any attention in this country. I had a front row seat to one of them, and that's the issue of housing. We're here in New England that has one of the biggest affordable housing challenges in the nation. In fact, over the years, more and more people have moved out of Boston and into the suburbs, farther and farther away, their commutes getting longer and longer, into New Hampshire, into Rhode Island, into other places within Massachusetts, because they can't afford the rent. And yet, if we were to go and to read the transcripts of 30 or 40 years' worth of presidential debates, I bet you that the issue of housing hasn't even come up once. That no question has been asked from any single moderator about how we're going to tackle a challenge that Americans of every background and every income level are feeling. Today, more and more American families are paying 50, 60% of their income in rent. The housing, oftentimes, that has been built in communities, whether it's Boston or San Francisco or my home city of San Antonio or anywhere else, is often luxury, multifamily housing that is unaffordable to most families. And the tools that we have used to create more housing supply oftentimes have been diminished, whether it's community development block grants or home funding or others. In this campaign, I intend to make housing a major issue to ensure that it is part of our vision for prosperity in this country. We can expand the low-income housing tax credit that has been the best way, the best means for creating housing. We can invest in community development block grants, in that home funding, and in so many other ways, with the goal being to ensure that people who are in the middle class and people who are poor can find a safe, decent, and affordable place to live in our country. And finally, in the years to come, what we do is not the only important question. It's also about how we do it and why. After Saturday's announcement, the first visit that I made was not to Iowa or even here to New Hampshire. It was to San Juan, Puerto Rico. I went to San Juan, Puerto Rico because I want every single American to know that everyone counts. If we faced any crisis over these last 2 years, It's that we have an administration that doesn't believe that is picking and choosing who gets opportunity and who doesn't, based on what you look like, based on your faith, based on how long you've been in this country. We need to get back to an America where everybody counts. And throughout history, we have had committed individuals, patriots, who helped ensure that we expanded the notion of what it means to be American and cast a wider and wider net of opportunity in our country. We're going backward today. And I went to Puerto Rico to tell them that if I'm elected president, I will work every single day so that everybody in our country, no matter who they are or where they come from, can get a good job, can have good health care, can have the opportunity for their children to get a good education, and that they as a family can reach their dreams. On Father's Day of this year, I went down to McAllen, Texas, on the U.S.-Mexico border. I was there to join a protest of the President's family separation policy. We went to the Ursula Processing Center, which is a place where children are separated from their parents. And there was a lot of sadness that day and irony. It was Father's Day, and little boys and girls were being taken from their mothers and fathers. But one of the things that gave me hope is that when I got there, the people protesting, many of them had the same color skin that I do and that those children in the center did, but so many of them didn't. So many of them didn't look like me. They came from different backgrounds. We are united in this country, not by how we look, but by what we value. We can choose to value compassion and inclusion, and we can come together around those values that have made this nation the envy of the world. We can work hard to create a nation that is the smartest, the healthiest, the fairest, and most prosperous. And by doing so, make sure that this century is a century that all of us can be proud of for the United States of America. Thank you very much. You want to take some questions? Sure. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. And I would love to take some questions if folks have them.
We have time for a couple of questions. If I just ask the first question, Mr. Secretary, you indicated your policy initiatives, universal pre-K, universal higher ed, Medicare for all. How do we pay for it all?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jim. You know, that's the first time I've ever been asked that question. I look forward during this campaign to putting forward plans on each of those. Let me say that I have always believed that it is incumbent upon people who are running and proposing something to tell you how they're going to pay for it. And I look forward to doing that during the course of this campaign. Let me just say that I know that that's not going to be an easy task. Let's just take Medicare for all. Right? I don't think that that's going to be easy politically. I don't believe that it's going to be easy to restructure our healthcare system. People can remember the fight that we had just to get to the Affordable Care Act in 2010. but I believe that it's worth it. I also believe, and I know that we have some healthcare professionals here that can probably attest to that, that we have a system right now where there is a lot of waste and there is a lot of overspending, and that we can create a better system that actually serves, first and foremost, the people who need health care. And you know, I know that some people may disagree on this, but I don't believe that health care fundamentally should be moved by profit. I don't think that if somebody is sick, that the first concern of somebody treating that person should be profit. And so I think that we need to design a system that first and foremost recognizes the humanity of each and every person and serves that first. And we can get there.
We have a question from ARP. Karen, I think you have a question on daycare? No? Karen?
Oh, Karen Ulmer Dorsch, AARP. And my question does concern Medicare as it exists today. We have in New Hampshire 260,000 people who are depending on Medicare for their affordable health care. Seniors and people with disabilities are needing this. What will you do to make sure that Medicare is there to ensure the citizens of this nation and Granite Staters that they can continue to live with dignity and with financial security as they age? So I'm asking, what will you do to strengthen Medicare's role for these vulnerable, I would say most vulnerable Americans?
Yeah,
And
thank you very much for the question. You know, I mentioned growing up with my grandmother who was on Medicare. Today, my mother is, and she has diabetes. And so I see the tremendous value that Medicare has to our senior population. I also know that as much attention as millennials often get, that the fastest growing demographic is actually baby boomers who are turning 65 and who need Medicare. And so my first commitment is to make sure that we don't go backward, because as you know, there very, very much are some people in Washington, D.C. that want to change the promise that has been made to our seniors and that they have paid into with Social Security, with Medicare. But my second is that I believe that we need to ensure that Medicare is there for everybody who's been receiving it, make sure that it's high quality, that we maintain a commitment to resource it, to invest in it, and also, as I said, that we expand it. But the first and foremost concern is ensuring that it serves the people who are on it now, and that we invest in it further, that we don't go backward. In fact, when it comes to health care, you know, what I see happening out there is we're moving toward an independent contractor society. You know, think about folks who drive Uber or Lyft, or for those of y'all in Boston, if they have those scooters yet, you know, those scooters that are everywhere downtown, right? People pick up those scooters and they take them to be recharged. Somebody picks them up in a pickup truck and they take them to be recharged at a station at night. They're not employees. They just get paid on a certain rate. The percentage of people who are self-employed is increasing. And so, in other words, this idea that where everybody used to have benefits and be an employee, of course, that's never going to completely go away, but that is diminishing. As that happens, I believe that the government has a role in stepping forward and making sure that that traditional safety net is there for all Americans. And that begins by protecting and enhancing Medicare for the people who are already on it. So if I'm president, I will make that commitment, that we don't go backward, that we invest in it, and eventually that we expand it as well. Right.
Tess? I'm going to wait for the mic.
Hi, I'm Tess Kinning, and I'm the President and CEO of Bi-State Primary Care Association. So we represent the community health centers in both Vermont and New Hampshire, and there are 30 million people who are served by community health centers nationwide. As your time in San Antonio as mayor, I know you know Central Med, one of the largest community health centers in Texas. And so my question for you is, how do you help build the infrastructure for access? Because it's access that makes the coverage real. Everybody can have a coverage in terms of insurance, but you need those access points. So how do you help build the infrastructure for the community health centers, serving now 30 million and could serve more? And most of those families are low and moderate income families. Thank you.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for the work that you do. I had the opportunity, both when I served as HUD Secretary and also as Mayor of San Antonio, to see the excellent work that community health centers do in fundamentally treating people that otherwise might not get care at all. And so I think that what we need to do is we need to make investments in health care that is there and available for people no matter where we find them, and that makes them comfortable coming and availing themselves of health care. In San Antonio, for instance, Central Med has a tremendous footprint now in the south side of the city, right? And so I think part of that is all about being in the neighborhoods where the need is the greatest and protecting the ability of those community health centers to be part and parcel of that neighborhood. And giving the care and being part of the neighborhood and being physically present, all of that requires resources. And I think that in the years to come, as we improve our healthcare system, what's not going to change is the need to be out there in the community to actually deliver it. Because there are a lot of people who are afraid to go to the doctor. Right? It doesn't feel like an experience that is for them. You know, and we see this in different ways in poor communities. Banking is another sector where you have a tremendous number of people who are unbanked. They could, in theory, go and avail themselves of a financial institution. They don't, because they think that that's not for them. They don't feel comfortable. Sometimes credit unions fill that gap, but a lot of times even they do not. Institutions, whether it's healthcare or it's other things, need to be present in communities. They need to be a part of community. They need to bridge that gap that too often exists with people who are impoverished, where they don't feel like they're a part of it. And thank you for the work that you do.
Mr. Secretary, excuse me, Mr. Secretary, welcome back to New Hampshire. My name is Matt Mayberry. I'm an Air Force veteran. In the state of New Hampshire, 10% of our population made up of veterans. But during our time together here today, for last hour, a veteran has committed suicide. One every hour. What are your thoughts on veterans, the military, and how we treat our veterans? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. You know, I represented and grew up in a city that has the official moniker of Military City, USA. If there are some of y'all in the Air Force, you may have gone to Lackland Air Force Base to get training. I hope you weren't there in July or August. It's very hot. You know, I think that in this 21st century, we have to be smarter about our military engagements. We saw 15 years ago what kind of mistake the Iraq War was. Obviously, our troops who went and fought over there did a noble job. However, I believe that we need to work to avoid conflict as much as possible, and that we need to invest in the personnel, the people of the military, as much as we sometimes seem to invest in the hardware of the military. That means investing in the Veterans Administration to be able to deliver effective health care. It means investing in the families everything from housing to educational opportunities of people who are serving in the military as well as veterans. You mentioned veteran suicide, for instance. It means doing what we can to ensure that we remove the stigma from a conversation about mental health. Because too oftentimes people who are dealing with thoughts of suicide or other mental health challenges don't feel comfortable coming forward and availing themselves of services. And so how do we change that? What kind of investments can we make? What kind of work can we do to change that? I think that it starts with a vision of investing in the people of the military and not only the hardware. I also think that we need to do what we can to harness the peacemaking functions of our government. And by that, I mean things like USAID, our diplomatic corps. One of the biggest challenges that we face today is that under this administration, many ambassadorships have gone unfilled around the world. It's harder to recruit people into the State Department, and the State Department is losing personnel because they don't believe that this administration believes in the mission of the State Department. We need to change that. And I believe that if we make those changes, if we're better about avoiding conflict, that that's better for our military personnel. And if we focus on our military personnel as much as we focus on the hardware, that the quality of life of the people who are serving our country so nobly, both as active duty and those who have already served, who are veterans, will be better in the years to come.
Thank you for being here. I'm Oren Falkowitz. Can you speak specifically to, as president, what you'll do to ensure that damages from cybersecurity are addressed both as individuals, corporations, and against our government, and they'll not go unchecked?
Yeah. This is, President Obama began to raise this issue in full in 2009. And the challenges out there in terms of cyber threats, nation to nation or actor to actor, but also in the corporate context, have only grown. And so I think that we need to recognize as a country that the old idea of conflict that's just physical has changed tremendously, and that we need to make investments in ensuring that the United States is the absolute best nation and most prepared nation when it comes to cybersecurity. Making investments in our military, making investments in universities that are training individuals in the United States to be able to engage in cyber defense and to serve this nation. I also think that in the years to come, we need to look at how much preparation companies are putting into protecting the privacy of consumers. I don't think that we can go much longer without there being some sort of penalty for companies that on a wide scale, if they are negligent, if they don't prepare, allow the private information of their consumers to end up in the hands of bad actors. So I think that we need to put an incentive into the system to ensure that companies have as much incentive to commit some of their own resources, and I know a lot of them already do. A lot of them do take it seriously. But we've also seen many instances of 40 million customer accounts, 50 million customer accounts. Those are just the ones that we hear about. Their information ending up in the wrong hands. I think that we need to create incentives for the private sector to take cybersecurity as seriously as possible. And in addition to that, make investments in training individuals who understand this and in investing in our cyber defense as a nation.
The Honorable Justice Roderick.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, good morning. Welcome to New Hampshire.
Thank you very much.
I want to follow up on Matt Mayberry's question on mental health. For the last 31 months, I've been traveling this state, going to gymnasiums and auditoriums. I've seen thousands of young people, many of whom have wet eyes and hug me when I talk about being less ashamed. Your point about stigma is correct. My question is this: it's one of the issues in American healthcare we almost never talk about. I wonder what your thoughts are on how we raise that visibility and how we get the help that people need. I've hugged more parents who tell me they can't get in to see a healthcare worker, they can't see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. It's not morally right, Mr. Secretary. What are we going to do about it, and how are we going to do it?
Thank you very much for the question. And, you know, I believe that it starts with, first of all, it starts with the courage of individuals who are experiencing mental health challenges and their families, very courageous individuals and families who are willing to speak up and inspire the nation to change, to eliminate that stigma. But all of us also have the responsibility to meet them halfway. And so, you know, I believe from healthcare plans to the way that schools treat mental health challenges of students, to the way that employers treat mental health challenges, that those challenges should be treated the same way that physical ailments are treated. Because oftentimes, there really is not much of a distinction. There's often a physical manifestation or consequence to a mental health affliction. And so this old distinction really has no more resonance or truth. And if I'm president, you know, I look forward to raising up those voices, to being a part of the solution in terms of trying to overcome that stigma, and in pushing for the right kinds of investments for schools, for employers, and for the United States government to make so that we can better treat individuals who are suffering from mental health challenges.
Maybe time for one or two more questions.
Yeah.
Gentleman here. Wait for him.
I'm Chuck Willing, and first of all, I want to say I appreciated very much what you said about recommitting to the Paris Climate Accord and also about the economic opportunities in a transition to renewable energy. My city, the city of Concord, committed to a transition to 100% renewable energy. And I was wondering, the IPCC recently stated that the world needs to largely decarbonize by 2030 in order to avoid catastrophic climate change. And I was wondering if you agreed that if you as president would point us toward that type of aggressive, move toward decarbonization.
Yeah, I do believe that there are ways that we can get there, right? And different ways that have been proposed, some more aggressive than others. But I do think that we need to get on a path, not only to ensuring that we meet the goals of the Paris Climate Accord, which I think we're going to do, right? But to go beyond that. And so I absolutely would move our nation in the direction of cutting carbon emissions, of ensuring that we're combating climate change, that the United States works with its allies to encourage them to continue to make the right investments to do the same, and that we are a leader again on this issue. Because, as you mentioned, we've been told very clearly that if we do not act within the next decade, that the consequences of that could be tragic in the years to come. We've all already seen the data. There's really no more argument about this. Some of y'all may have seen about a month ago that Meet the Press, the Sunday show, had a show on climate change, and they announced that they're not going to have any more guests on who are simply climate change deniers. because the science on this is settled. It is settled, and now we need to act and make the right investments, and I'm committed to doing that.
Maybe if I
More
could just
question?
ask you the last question.
Yeah.
Patriots versus the Chiefs?
Well, y'all, I am a Philadelphia Eagles fan, all right? So, like, let me tell you something. This is how you know that I'm going to tell you the truth.
That's it.
Let it be said that I came here and I told you all the truth. I'm sad that my Eagles lost last week. Good to see you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Give you a little tote bag here. That's you. There's a zipper and everything in it,
All right.
okay? All right.
Here you go, y'all. Thank you. Take care.
Well done. Well done.